Good morning, News and Views. Di Richards here, and I'm just entering the welfare park. And today I want to talk to you about arson is a crime. Fires in this area are being deliberately set. Now, one of the reasons that is put up there is because in the summer there were at least one deliberate fire here, and if you see where the bench over there where that chap is sitting, that bench was set alight by a group of young kids. But were they just playing? If you're taught to make fires and you're taught that making a fire every day is a good thing, surely in a park like this, those children were only playing. It's not arson. It's play. Surely. So if we have a look at the Welsh Government stance on children and fires, we'll see that children do get excited about fires. Fires are new and thrilling and fascinating. If they happen at a play setting once a year, then just like Christmas, they generate plenty of giddy excitement, which makes the situation unpredictable and difficult to risk assess. If they happen regularly, they become commonplace and no one gets giddy. Now, it's a good job that those children lit that fire and that they light fires regularly so that they don't become giddy, so they practice not to become giddy and fall into fires, because at the end of the day it's important that children don't fall into fires. No one gets giddy. And the same person probably wrote, no play setting has been prosecuted for allowing children to burn. Allowing children to burn. Not children sometimes have an accident with fire, which is unfortunate. No. Allowing children to burn. So the empirical evidence that we were shown, the videos, and the written evidence you can find in the text of the books is all based upon a scientific misrepresentation. And it's all taught with deception to make you believe that this is the way that children should play. Why? Why is this organisation in Wales, who advised the Welsh Government on the play environments for children, why are they using methods of deception to teach a scientific misrepresentation that is causing harm, not just physical harm, but mental harm to children? Why? I was actually taught this on the level 2 award in playwork practice, that children, we saw a film in which a child was allowed to be burnt. Honest to God, I kid you not, this really happened. This really happened in real life, in real Wales. Your Wales. So let me take you back to the beginning, all right? Let me take you back to the beginning. I wrote a book. Look. Di Richards. My name is Di Richards, and I wrote a book called Understanding the Origin and Evolution of Sport, Volume 1, Rugby Union. And as part of the evolution of sport, some sports potentially would begin with children's play, potentially with adults play. People playing, people invent new things, new sports begin. That's how sports began many years ago. People didn't just sit down and say, oh, I know, they didn't, I know, let's create a sport. No, people played doing things and sports began. Like a lot of sports came out of the military, like archery, shooting, Rugby union is probably one of them. And so they didn't have a structural beginning as such. Like rugby league would have had a structural beginning because it was a sport rugby union, and the guys up north wanted to get paid to play, and so they broke away from the rugby union, the rugby football union, who were the sort of in charge of the sport in England at the time. Anyway, so to come back to where to the fire, to kids and fire, right? Okay, to come back to that. All right. Okay. So part of the evolution of sport is some of those sports are going to begin with play. All right. Okay. And so I use a play analogy during the book, which happened back in the 1980s when I used to take my daughter to gymnastics. I just happened upon a circumstance where two toddlers were in a play area, a soft play area, and I was just, this is pretty amazing. They what was going on? I mean, it's just struck me, you know, this is unbelievable. The stuff that they were doing. One of them was like, my daughter was around 3. The other youngster was about 2 years and 3 months. I think there's 9 months between them. Anyway, so 25 years later, they both become world champions at a sport. So you've got non-Stanford triathlon world champion, and you've got my daughter Victoria Richards, who was a whitewater rafting world champion. And I, you know, as you get those moments where they stick in your mind, what is going on? You know, this is, you know, it was like a crazy art form. You know, they're challenging each other. And then when I try to step in and try to teach them forward rows, whoa, we don't go. They weren't old enough even to form their words to say "get lost, Dad," and "get lost, bloke." You know, it was amazing. It was an absolute amazing, and that's just stuck with me for years. And when I finished my book, I started on researching children's play, and it took me 8 years to understand exactly what was going on within that event of those two toddlers playing together in an amazing just way. It was just so inventive, so physically challenging. Anyway, so to come back to the the book and stuff. Well, I then got a job in a children's charity, but to do the job, I had to go and do a qualification that allowed me in Wales to do that job. So I went and did the level 2 award in playwork practice that was run by Swansea City Council, and that's where, you know, and I thought, you know, what you know, I mean, obviously, you know, I've played sport for, you know, by this time I'd played sport for 50 years, played games, you know, it's all structured stuff, but also being very inventive with creating my own games and stuff, you know. So and you know, so I knew a lot about play, you know, or how you would adapt life and play and stuff. And anyway, but I went on this course, and my wife came as well, because she was a volunteer she was going to be a volunteer in the charity, and we were traumatized. What we saw on films of what they wanted us to do was child abuse. It was child abuse, and it was children being burnt. It was children taking risks that were unacceptable to a parent. It was children fighting in a play setting over hammers. It was unbelievable. Honest to God, we were traumatised. And anyway, so I refused to take the course, and in the end, I got sacked from a job because I refused to do the qualification. It was teaching me to abuse children. And so I followed it up. Because I was writing a book, I followed it up. And I read the book from cover to cover, and I shook my head. And then I went to look at the researched, or the recommended material, and that's where it got seriously more than abusive. Anyway, so I wanted to find out who wrote this stuff. I mean, I knew the authors were on. Okay, so the authors are on this book, all right? Okay, Bob Hughes is the author, and a guy called Mike Greenaway who runs an organisation called Play Wales. So they are down as writing that book. But I wanted to know who was responsible for this course. So in the end, what I did was I sent him a Freedom of Information request with quotes from the book, trying to find out whose warped mind was writing this stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to read out now the Freedom of Information request, and then I'm going to read out the reply by the solicitors of the play charity Play Wales, who wrote the course material, the solicitors of the play charity, on what they said and why they could not identify or give me the information I required. Email sent to mail@playwales.org.uk on Monday the 6th of August 2018 at 8:59 a.m. Subject: Freedom of Information Request. Freedom of Information Request. This FOI request relates to the contents of the booklet Award in Playwork Practice Level 2 Learner Resources 2nd edition 2018, copyright Play Wales. Please supply under the Freedom of Information Act the following information. Freedom of Information Request 1. What are the names of the persons who are responsible for the editorial content of the booklet Award in Playwork Practice Level 2 Learner Resources 2nd edition 2018, copyright Play Wales? Freedom of Information Request 2. What is the name of the person who has written the paragraph below that appears on page 37 of this publication? In this country, our culture tends to suggest that children are incompetent and incapable. We start from a position of distrusting them to be able to fend for themselves. In other cultures, even those as close to us as Northern Europe, small children use axes to chop firewood or walk to school on their own as a matter of custom. They are seen as competent and capable. They have been gradually introduced to these situations from an early age. They have gradually built up skills and confidence. The culture is that adults respect and trust children. The difference in the level of competence and capability between these children and those in our settings is our attitude towards them, the experience we provide them, the expectations we have, and the assumptions we make. Freedom of Information Request 3. What is the source for the information below which appears in the above paragraph? In this country, our culture tends to suggest that children are incompetent and incapable. Freedom of Information Request 4. What is the source for the information below which appears in the above paragraph? In other cultures, even those as close to us as Northern Europe, small children use axes to chop firewood or walk to school on their own as a matter of custom. They are seen as competent and capable. They have been gradually introduced to these situations from an early age. They have gradually built up skills and confidence. The culture is that adults respect and trust children. Freedom of Information Request 5. What is the name or names of the person that is responsible for writing the chapter Fearsome Fire on page 39? Freedom of Information Request 6. What is the source for the information below which appears in this chapter? Children do get excited about fires. Fires are new and thrilling and fascinating. If they happen at a play setting once a year, then, just like Christmas, they generate plenty of giddy excitement, which makes the situation unpredictable and difficult to risk assess. If they happen regularly, they become commonplace and no one gets giddy. Freedom of Information Request 7. Paragraph 5 in the chapter Fearsome Fire states that no play setting has been prosecuted for allowing children to burn. What is the source for this information? Freedom of Information Request 8. Page 19 states, take a step back. If children were with friends on a hill with a stream and trees in view and their houses a long stone's throw away, what would happen? They would play. There would be no adults involved. They would take risks, hurt themselves, bully, swear, fight, cuddle, be cruel, think, dream, play games, and above all, they would solve by one means or another the problems that confronted them. What is the source for the above information? Reply to Freedom of Information Request from Lowry Phillips, copied to Bethan Walsh and Claire Edwards at geldads.com on the 14th of August 2018 at 12:31 p.m. Subject, Freedom of Information Act Request, Play Wales, Geldads, LLP Cardiff, FID 1953599. Dear Mr. Richards, I refer to your email of 6th of August addressed to Cathy Muse of Play Wales, headed Freedom of Information Request. As legal advisors to Play Wales, we have been asked by Play Wales to respond to your email on its behalf. The Freedom of Information Act 2000 does not apply to all organisations. It only covers public authorities. Schedule 1 of FOIA contains a list of the bodies that are classed as public authorities in this context. Play Wales is not a public authority as defined by FOIA and accordingly is not required to respond to your request for information. Should you have any further queries in relation to the above, please can you email me directly. Yours sincerely, Lowry Phillips, Partner, Information Law Department, for and on behalf of Geldads, LLP. What we were being taught was to place children in an environment where they could behave antisocially. At the time I termed it a play zoo. It was where children acted like animals and the adults looked on. You have to ask yourself the question, why a solicitor would refuse to provide information about a Welsh Government funded organisation that advises the Welsh Government on how children should play. I found it a concern. I think you should find it a concern too, especially if you've got children, grandchildren. Thank you for watching. Di Richards, walk around Wales, shy away. Go on.